Jim Bohannon speaks to Congressional Chaplain and Communications Director for C-SPAN, Howard Mortman, about prayer on Capitol Hill.
One of the great American traditions in terms of our government is the opening prayer on Capitol Hill. And we're speaking now with Howard Mortman. He is the Communications Director for C-SPAN, the public affairs cable network, who has written a fascinating story about this, a story that I guess should have been told a long time ago. When Rabbis Bless Congress, the great American story of Jewish prayers on Capitol Hill. This is from Cherry Orchard Books. How did you come to write this, Howard?
So, Jim, thank you. This is very much part of my work at C-SPAN. I spend a lot of time watching Congress as part of my job, for better or for worse, and I've always been fascinated, just as a quirk. As you just said, Congress opens up each session with a prayer. It's actually the very first thing that they do is pray, and that's even before they do the Pledge of Allegiance. They pray, and that's even before then they get to debating and voting. As an institution, it goes to the very beginning of the founding of Congress. Even before there was a Bill of Rights, they actually enshrined there would be prayer and a chaplain in Congress. So it goes back to the very beginning. So just as a Congress junkie, as a junkie of American, lover of American political history, I was just fascinated just in general about this long tradition. Now, I have to admit and say outright here, I'm Jewish, so when a rabbi has been a guest chaplain in Congress, I kind of perk up a little bit more and was very intrigued by rabbis who gave the prayer. But just in general, the institution of prayer in Congress has been little reported on, and it's so ingrained in the tradition that I personally just think deserves a lot more attention.
It's not really, I don't believe, is it enshrined in the Constitution? This is tradition, right?
This is very much tradition. This is not constitutional. This is the rules of Congress, the rules of the House and the Senate. They both have a chaplain who is paid for by taxpayers. They get a salary. They have staff. The prayer itself is a rule and a custom of Congress. It is not in the Constitution. The White House does not have an official chaplain. The Supreme Court opens with a little prayer with a mention of God, but there's no chaplain there. So this is very much a feature, a distinction of the legislative branch.
Now, Jews have not always been welcome in every corridor in this country. How far back does the tradition of allowing rabbis to take part in this ceremony go?
So thank you for that, because then it narrows down to what is the focus of my book, which is a sliver of this piece of history. So there have been chaplains praying in Congress going back to the very beginning, back to the 1780s. Guest chaplains, people who are filling in for the official chaplains, men of the cloth, began in the 1850s. The first Jewish clergyman to pray was in 1860. His name was Rabbi Morris Raphael. President James Buchanan was there. James Buchanan was president at the time, and it was on the eve of the Civil War. And here comes a rabbi praying in Congress. He looked like nothing else they've ever seen. Some of the coverage in the New York Times at the time was talking about how this man in costume was praying in front of Congress, and some of the remarks from other members of Congress were shocked by this novelty of a rabbi in Congress.
I would assume that since rabbis were given this opportunity, that there have been other religions maybe not as dominant in American life. For example, Islamic imams, for example, perhaps those of some Far Eastern faiths have also been allowed. I would assume that by today that quite a few different groups of people have been represented among those who are chaplains or guest chaplains.
That is absolutely correct, Jim. You're right. And as time has gone on and as America has changed, there have been, as you say, imams. There have been Buddhists. The Dalai Lama has been a guest chaplain in the Senate. Native Americans have prayed. And maybe shocking most of all to American tradition, women have prayed in Congress. And that began in the 1970s when we kind of saw the first women. So the religious demographics have modified as American, as more folks in America have been accepted in higher levels. But yes, so many religions who have representatives in America have also had their men and women of cloth pray in Congress.
Howard Mortman is the communications director for C-SPAN, the Cable Public Affairs Network, and he's the author of the book When Rabbis Bless Congress from Cherry Orchard Books, subtitled The Great American Story of Jewish Prayers on Capitol Hill.
It's 15 minutes before the hour. COVID-19 vaccines could soon be...